Yes.
And I'll do a brief introduction. I know Lauren is very modest, but Lauren is incredibly hardworking at the Center for Climate Integrity, where she's a manager of the schools campaign, and she highlights the impacts of climate change on school districts throughout the U.S. She's worked with CCI's political team since 2019, and most recently was building nonprofit partnerships as outreach and engagement lead. She's also an experienced program administrator, community organizer, and educator, and has worked in field organizing for political campaigns in the New Jersey General Assembly and has led advocacy work with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense, and for many other groups. And so, really excited to hear her wisdom here. Thank you so much for coming.
That is super nice of you to say. Thank you. And I'll also add, I'm a mother of two teenagers, 13 and 15-year-old in public schools in New Jersey. So that's a big part of what I do and why I do my work as well. Um, okay, I wanted to just start by acknowledging the Climate Health Society mission. I like to start with connecting and fill you in on who I am. There's a whole slideshow about that, but I wanted to sort of, tell you why Climate Health Society and Lisa and James caught my attention. I can't remember why or I mean how I ended up at Lisa's webinar, which was like a small one like this, but you're following extreme heat and public health impacts drew me to you as well as the fact in New Jersey and other things I'm sure because you're a connector, you're very connected in a lot of places. So yeah, I want to say that your mission of addressing what you say is the critical intersection of climate change and human health is something we're paying a lot of attention to at the Center for Climate Integrity. And that's because we've learned from our relationships around the country that municipal elected officials, state elected officials, and community leaders are all concerned, let's just say, about that as well. It's definitely a topic that's grown a lot in the national space, and lots more conversations happening about it, which I'm excited about personally. Um, and I see a connection here between what you do in terms of empowering your professionals and policymakers, and to recognize, prevent, and respond to health threats posed by environmental exposures, especially climate instability. Because we too empower people to just absorb our knowledge and tools that we have in order to better understand the climate crisis. And our perspective of that is through climate accountability. So I'll tell you about that in just a bit. But we also share your values of evidence-based work and equity and a sense of community and putting community needs forward. Um, I also noticed something that really stood out to me why I was drawn to James's work is because he refers to building community resilience to the health impacts of extreme heat in particular and weather, which is right on the nose of what we do as well. And then Lisa definitely confirmed for me that extreme heat is of utmost importance to this community, to this audience, and that quantifying the costs of public health as related to climate is definitely needed. And I know this in a national perspective as well. It's developing, but not quite there yet. Um, and that you, Elisa, are familiar with the story of climate polluter accountability, which is our specialty. And so, what does that mean? And what are we? Who are we at CCI? I am going to now share my screen. Um, and who we are is the Climate Center for Climate Integrity, which is a national nonprofit organization. We're a C3 organization. And we supply the knowledge and the tools that communities need to hold the oil industry accountable for their role in the climate crisis, specifically for their knowledge and deception, and to pay for the damages that they have knowingly caused in the climate crisis that fall upon our communities. Um, and I just want to say here, for purposes of today, we're going to look at three different ways in which we approach this. One of them is that we expose the documentation of big oil's knowledge and deception. We also uncover the costs. We have some specific climate cost studies that might be of interest to you. And now that I know where you are, I could specify a couple of local pieces of work as well. And we, of course, advocate for climate accountability, or essentially the make polluters pay concept in different ways. So, what are we talking about? We are talking about documentation that came out, well, as early as the 1960s, but that was actually exposed to the public in 2014. And this was documentation unearthed by researchers and academics and reporters and such that showed that just like big tobacco and PFAS and lead paint and other industries that knew and lied about their products, oil did the same. So these hundreds of pages of industry documents were uncovered, and knowing that burning fossil fuels would raise global temperatures and lead to catastrophic climate change. And these documents confirm that an increase in carbon dioxide was due to the burning of fossil fuels, that fossil fuel consumption would cause dramatic environmental effects before the year 2050, and that climate change as a result of their products would require costly adaptations, drastically changing the way that we all live and work. So what you're seeing here is just a couple of snapshots, a couple of documents that show the deep science that they had, hiring climate scientists to predict temperatures that would occur in current years, which was right on the nose, and the fact that this actually is creating a crisis. So the documents further reveal that they clearly understood addressing climate change meant threatening their bottom line. And so Big Oil lied to the American public in an effort to delay climate action and keep the world hooked on fossil fuels. And by the 80s, they launched a massive decades-long coordinated campaign to lie to the public and lawmakers and the media and about those catastrophic impacts that they studied and that they knew their fossil fuel products would cause. So they spent millions of dollars on false advertising, scientists for hire, front groups, and more. So I'm just going to go back to these documents for a quick second and say that these three shots right here are from a specific document in 1978 by Dr. James Black. It was actually 20 minutes. This happened 20 minutes away from me in Linden, New Jersey, where it was the home of the Exxon Research and Engineering Division, and presented the greenhouse effect presentation for Exxon Corporation Management. And these are just a couple of documents that were in the summary of that, and we have that on our website. I also want to point out that upper right corner here where this is actually a New York Times, whoops, sorry about that, New York Times article that shows evidence of a patent that Shell was raising their oil rigs due to the rising of sea levels caused by their own impacts. So even though during the 80s they were contradicting that message that climate change is real and making it debatable, they were protecting their own equipment from the impacts that they were knowingly causing. And this was a response to the UN Kyoto Protocol to reduce global emissions, called the Victory Memo, an inter-memo from 1998 by the American Petroleum Institute to achieve victory via a method of uncertainty in climate science. So who's paying the price? We are. And certain communities, in particular environmental justice communities, are experiencing the cost of damages more disproportionately than we are, than other communities, due to decades of systemic racism and inequality, with more exposure to air pollution and heat waves and flooding and unsafe drinking water, all of which matter to the medical community, certainly, and disinvestment in local infrastructure. The communities are uniquely impacted by climate change and the pollution that causes it. So, what are these costs? We work with engineering firms, with experts, and with communities to help them calculate the price tag for climate adaptation and for the cost that fossil fuel companies have imposed upon our governments. So, I'm going to give you a whole um, web page of lots of different reports that are going on. I'm just going to highlight a few of those. But basically, we know that taxpayers are being slammed not only by a massive bill for climate-driven disaster recovery, but also for resilience and adaptation to protect us from future harm. So at CCI, we show how these impacts are financially affecting municipal budgets. And those that you see in front of you are state reports. We have several. And I'm just going to go into a little bit of deeper of our three municipal cost studies. Those are from LA County and from Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin municipalities, and also Pennsylvania. So this, what you're seeing in your face there is $4.7 billion just on adapting to hotter temperatures through 2040 in Los Angeles County. But I just also wanted to point out that in our state reports, and something in common with different territories is that protecting emergency facilities and hospitals from severe weather damage is a very high cost, as well as extreme heat impacts. Protecting folks from urban heat islands and even on school playgrounds and things like that. But we also acknowledge wildfire smoke impacts and treating waterborne illnesses and asthma respiratory diseases from heat and humidity and vector-borne illnesses as well. So this is just a snapshot of inside the Los Angeles County study that came out in 2024 with all of these millions and billions of dollars attributed to federal, state, county, and municipal funding. And you can see that such public health, issues such as West Nile virus and wildfire mitigation, pediatric asthma, cooling centers, HVAC upgrades, all of these sort of medically related impacts are part of that cost study. So this is another snapshot within the Los Angeles County study, specifically to do with urban heat islands. And I'm just going to move my own screen out of my way so I can see the top of it. But essentially, this is just one part of the countywide study to show how, like what I was talking about before, how certain communities are disproportionately impacted by these costs. And this right here is a description of Wisconsin, the pie chart of Wisconsin specific to public health, the millions of dollars for treating these three conditions of asthma, West Nile virus, and Lyme disease at the municipal level. Here's the larger chart, kind of comparing it to Los Angeles County, but these are essentially Wisconsin's costs for public health adaptation. So here's some line items here again, just like Lyme disease, West Nile virus, etc. We also have a cooling schools study. So Jenny said she's in Philadelphia, putting out here, this is one of the cities we looked at, but there's essentially a whole bunch of school districts across the country that are in this hotter days, higher cost study. And essentially what we're doing is looking at the days that are over 80 degrees Fahrenheit during the school year and looking at that as data for calculating the cost of cooling schools for installing equipment and also for operation and maintenance. So this is an example of Philly with the cost of $565 million here at the bottom for equipment and O&M at $15 million. And we have a price tag of $5.6 billion for the entire state. I'm doing this synopsis pretty quick of all these studies, and I'll get into it in just a second. Just wanted to point out that the LA County, I'm saying this because Kelly's not here with me today. She's unable to make it, but she's, our climate scientist. So I'm not speaking to methodology, but I can refer you to it. that it's based on Medicare and Medicaid costs paid by federal taxes. Those are where those numbers are coming from in the LA study on those diseases, treating, such diseases as West Nile virus. That's where that figure comes from. Um, and I wanted to point out for this in Philadelphia that at the beginning of the 2022 school year, unusually hot weather led to some Philadelphia classroom temperatures exceeding 90 degrees, causing Philadelphia afternoon class cancellations and school closures in 2023, which has its own other impacts besides, physical health. The highest HVAC costs of the state are in Philadelphia, with an estimated $152.4 million price tag for HVAC improvements. So, lots of other cities, Chicago, LA, New York, are in this study as well. And what are folks doing about it? Because of these enormous costs and because of the fact that the oil companies have known and lied about these predicted catastrophes. Well, more than 1 in 4 of us Americans are actually living in a community suing big oil now. Those are just some of the headlines. So, what are we talking about? We're talking about specifically that 11 states, the District of Columbia, and dozens of local and tribal governments have filed lawsuits to hold the fossil fuel industry accountable for their lies and to make them pay for damage. This is what the map looks like now, with the state of Michigan being the most recent, as in 2026. And before that was the state of Hawaii, and before that was the city of Chicago. The cases are brought under a number of legal theories, including common law torts and product liability and consumer protection and even racketeering. And we have a whole lawsuit library on our website to show you the details of each of these cases. So, what can litigation do? Pay for the damage that's knowingly caused, stop deceiving the public about their harm, and correct the record. Okay. So I'm stopping for a second because I want to acknowledge that this is a tool, access to court, that communities can use and should use to hold corporations accountable for harms. Now, right now, that access to court is being threatened. So when we talk about what is exactly happening right now in terms of campaigning, which is what I do on the political team, but just that communities should be aware of, again, from just an educational perspective, is that the oil industry is looking for a liability waiver so that they do not have to be held accountable for these harms in court. Just like the gun industry achieved, the gun manufacturing industry achieved with the PLCA decision. So, what that looks like is there have been solid and documented conversations in the press going on since all of last year. And just recently, there was a hearing with Representative Hagman from Wyoming, actually testifying that they're starting, that this was actually considered a legislative proposal. So, as of right now, this has not become a bill or bill number yet, but there is definitely an initiative through Congress to attempt to stop communities from going to court for suing oil for harms. So we are helping communities understand this story better, let them know about it, and there is a demand to stop immunity from happening for big oil. And so we are part of a very large coalition of nonprofits, and officials, pretty much anybody who wants to be involved in this fight. So this is just one example of that whole campaign of the national effort. We have monthly calls, the next one being next week already, because it's already going to be March 12th at 3 p.m. for this. And there is an entire toolkit with this to help share this information. Here it is with some of the materials that are involved here. Background, talking points, social media, how you take action, resolution language, as well as, detailed information one pagers, two pagers, posters and banners and etc. So I know I just threw a lot of information at you, and I wanted to go back to, I think there was a couple of comments in the chat. I just want to start having a conversation with you so that we can get to understand this a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to go over some of the where to find these things on the website. So from left to right, I'm just going to do this way for a minute. I refer to the lawsuits in terms of where are climate cases happening and what's the status of each of those and what are the claims, etc. So, for those who want to dive in, there's a case chart here where you can actually open that up and it'll tell you exactly what the status of that case is right now and what obstacles that case has already been through, like the ones that you were referring to, Emily, such as what are the motions to dismiss. Um, and so that information is updated regularly so it stays current. Now, over here, you can do a search. You can do a search by geography. You can do a search by claim. You can do a search by status in terms of is the motion to dismiss on appeal? Was it just recently filed? Was it dismissed, etc. So this really does the work for you in terms of for people like me to really understand what we're talking about. It even does it by defendant. So that's really helpful. And any questions you have specifically about lawsuits, just to be clear, we don't litigate. We just help folks understand, what these cases are and what
Is
the
this
complaint.
behind a paywall or can anybody access this?
Oh, did I not put that? I'm sorry. That's just my general website. I didn't even put that in the chat, did I?
But we don't need it's not a paid subscription thing.
No, no, not at all. No, no, no. Right. It's there for your education. Okay. So next we have evidence because for all intents and purposes today, we're talking about climate. And so climate deception, this is where the documentation lives in terms of the timeline and exploring the entire, what we call the cathunk, because the binder is so large, if you put it on the table, it makes that sound. Um, and this is everything that we have in terms of the hundreds of pages of documentation. Okay. When I mentioned the fact this is the new what does the deception look like now piece, that is this Big Oil's Deceptive Climate Ads report that our research team just put out recently. And then we also have the evidence of deception, so the chapters on how they lied and how they actually funded that multi-million-dollar disinformation campaign. And then we have a whole bunch of news and updates that always shows up. Okay, so deception, and just to say again, we're happy to go through the documents with you at any time if you want. I also just want to point out that we do have a lot of information as well on plastics deception. And so I know that Lisa, for example, in her webinar went into details on harms of microplastics to the body. We are following the same thing, but it is under this lens that we know that unfortunately recycling was used as a sales tactic for their products, and that it is actually a fraud. So that's where this comes from, and this is the documentation that proves, again, they knew they lied about their plastic products and related news. And then the projects. So there's a lot in here, but what I want to tell you about that I referred to already today are these cost studies. So apologies that Kelly can't be here to explain this a little further, and that I did not do like the best job of explaining these. But basically the explanations that you're looking for in terms of methodology, how did we come up with these numbers, et cetera, are in here for sure. Evidence-based, very, very important to us. So I just want to, there's a whole bunch in here. I can't explain all of it like right now, but we have the Wisconsin study, the Los Angeles study. Actually, this is a better view right here. Wisconsin, Los Angeles, Pennsylvania, those three studies I was talking about. If you click on it, the detailed report will be there explaining exactly what those costs are what those pie charts look like in terms of those three diseases that were, being paid for by Wisconsin communities. And this is where the state reports live in general. And then this is where the Cooling School Study lives. So with that in particular, here it is. You can go to the map and sort of click on any state to look at this, okay? So I'm just going to pick Pennsylvania because I was referring to that before. If we go to Pennsylvania, it takes you to that state page. And it'll explain what the extreme heat looks like in Pennsylvania. You can download the specific report for that. But if you scroll down, it's going to give you the general costs of equipment and O&M and the number of students affected. And then here's Philadelphia at the top. So it's ranked by cost. And Philadelphia's at the top there for me, pulling out those numbers that I shared in the slide. Pittsburgh's number 2. And again, this is based on numbers of over 80 degrees in the year. And I'm saying this with hesitation a little bit because we are going to have next month, we're going to have a Cooling Schools like update session with Kelly, and all of this information on what exactly this study looks like now after 2025 will be revealed. So, and then I just wanted to say, and then I'll talk about schools just for a quick second. Let me see here. What am I missing? I'm going back up here. I think that was mostly, yes. If you want to subscribe to our newsletter, I'm sorry, our Exxon News reporting project, that is great because it comes out with different articles all the time online. And we also, of course, keep apprised of, it's just everything that CCI is in across the country in terms of publications. This is an explainer on that whole Boulder case that I was talking about. Here it is. So there's probably way more than you want in here. Here it is. In terms of schools, I just wanted to say that particularly what we're doing right now with that campaign is letting school districts know that they do have these costs imposed upon them, and they do qualify as entities that can take big oil to court. And we want them to know that these other lawsuits exist, and help them quantify their costs. So that's pretty much where we are now. And then just informing them about this world of climate accountability and what it looks like. So I have been explaining this whole concept of climate accountability to different school communities, and just got back from the Green Schools Conference in San Diego, where those nonprofits and community leaders who are looking at improving school infrastructure because of extreme heat, because of falling apart buildings, because of super hot playgrounds, etc., and even wildfire smoke filtration, that links to this, right? The public health threat. So that's how this kind of marriage came together between CCI schools and public health.
It's amazing. And I'm wondering, so yeah, I mean, who pays for that ultimately? It's the taxpayer who's paying for the increased cost of infrastructure,
Right.
capital improvements to infrastructure.
That's right. Yeah. So specifically, speaking of California, LA has a $9 billion local taxpayer bond for this year. San Diego, because I heard this from the mouth of the superintendent's office when I was there, has $13 billion. And those local taxes are going towards school improvements, and other. A portion of that is going to HVAC, right? It doesn't even cover all the costs, but it's absolutely only coming from local taxpayer pockets. It is not coming from any corporate polluters.